Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to Dojo Talks. Today we're doing Dojo Talks Should FIDE Sanction Russia? I think you guys have all been hearing about what's been going on. Today we're mainly going to be discussing the chess world and how FIDE exactly we think should be reacting to all this. Typical disclaimer, it's like an incredibly crazy situation, and there's like lots and lots of conflicting sides to some of these things. So we're just going to try to hash it out, see where we all stand. Before the show, Jesse was asking me just to kind of give a brief, summary of my connection with Ukraine, and I figure folks are interested. So I was born in Kiev, and my family is from there. Both my folks' parents are from there. Fortunately, most of my family is in the United States. I do have an uncle and his family that are in Lvov, and that's obviously, incredible bummer, because he actually used to live here. Then they immigrated back to Ukraine, so I did definitely know him growing up. But of course, just the whole situation, even without that, just the whole situation is like incredibly depressing. I've just been like nonstop looking at news, doom scrolling, feeling very bummed out, like what am I doing here, like trying to help. It was really cool that we raised a ton of money yesterday with the charity stream. I think the dojo community really came through, so I'll just say that people really put in some amazing support, and we got donations from like Ben Feingold and Jakob Agard, and people were fantastic, and we raised over 11,000, which it's not nothing. So I think it was at least something we can do. So I feel better about that now. But situation has been incredibly messed up, obviously. Okay,
how old were you?
Oh, when I immigrated, I was 10 months old, super young.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't feel like a strong national identity with Ukraine or anything like that. It's just a very sad situation, that's all.
Right.
I want to add my own really tiny forward to this episode as well, which is normally we don't talk about things that have the potential to get people as upset as what we're talking about today. So, I think the most upset people have gotten was when we said that maybe some people had talent for chess.
No, they were pissed. That really got some people going.
Yeah, Jesse knows that really pissed some people off. But like on a week by week basis, when we say here's how to use your time management, or here's what you should do with short draws, it doesn't normally touch the coconuts of our listeners. There's some danger today that we may say some things that are upsetting to people, and I just want to say that's possible, because we are going to sort of be talking about political issues that go beyond the chessboard as well, necessarily, and that's often very, very sensitive. So we don't mean any harm by any of this. We don't want to upset or hurt anybody, but I think all three of us think it's better to talk about stuff than to avoid stuff. And I don't know, I shouldn't talk for you guys, but that's my take. I think it's worth talking about these things, and it's more useful to be open to other people's opinions than to be upset about other people's opinions.
Well, I'm not planning on upsetting anyone today. I'm just going to give my viewpoint, and I'm just going to make it rational, and I'm going to try to be as understanding as I can to people that might not agree with me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Kostya, give us your spiel here. Give us your 2 cents on the issue.
Well, let's break it down, and then maybe we'll start with the first point. So the timeline of this has been really dramatic if you're on chess Twitter. Basically, of course, the invasion started like several days ago, and then there was like 1 or 2 days where FIDE basically didn't really say anything about it, and they were getting called out a lot for not really condemning it. And they had this like emergency conference or whatever, and they started releasing some sanctions. So the first thing they did was they they just canceled the upcoming Olympiad that was going to take place in Russia, which that was like one of the first things people were calling for. I believe Nigel Short even said like he suggested it on day one and then was kind of shot down. Then 2 days later, they ended up doing it. Yeah, that seemed like a very logical step, and now they're trying to figure out where to hold the Olympiad. But then, I mean, I don't know, maybe the situation was, you know, greatly escalated by Karyakin himself, but even without him, I mean, there was lots of people calling for FIDE to start banning Russia just from all international tournaments, banning Russian players, of course, disconnecting from Russian sponsors. People are calling for the resignation of Dvorkovich because he is, of course, close to Putin. How close exactly, like, I have no idea, but clearly, you know, they have a relationship. Yeah, I guess so we kind of wanted to go step by step, right, and figure out what exactly should FIDE do on all these points. I mean, I assume the Olympiad, what do you guys think? Good or stayed in Russia?
I mean, kind of no option.
No option, right?
Right. So the Olympiad is a little bit different because there we're talking about not just sanctioning Russia, but the safety then of the players. Right. So
Yeah.
that's already like there's reasons to just simply logistic reasons not to do it. I think for me, it's kind of a bigger issue question of all these things of like to what extent should FIDE be willing to sanction states and or individuals for their actions regarding a geopolitical conflict, right? And let's just say, as you guys, we said it before the show started, it's the first time. There's definitely been other very hairy situations. Most recently, Azerbaijan and Armenia. They could have done something about that. They did not, right? And those guys have been forced to play against one another to their incredible mutual hatred. We've had a bunch of Islamic countries being forced to play with Israeli players. Right. Also very difficult, you know, and so there's been all kinds of other previous situations in which no sanctions wasn't even a thought on somebody's mind.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the U.S. just left Afghanistan, if you want to talk also things that are in fairly recent memory. I mean, the U.S. was occupying Afghanistan until very recently with, you know, active military actions. But yeah, I can't think of any time that FIDE has done any sanctions. So this is a whole new world.
Right.
Yeah, and it's particularly new to sanction a player directly. Yeah, the other big thing that they announced was that they're going to have Karyakin and Grandmaster Sergei Shipov, who is a very popular commentator, for, I guess, their comments on social media supporting Putin and supporting the war. And now people are also calling for Karyakin to be like removed from the candidates, stripped of his GM title, just like all kinds of stuff. And
that's other reasons to be stripped of his GM title.
Also true. but it's like it feels like it's all part of it, right? So yeah, the other question is like, does FIDE really have the right to kind of do something to a player based on? Because I mean, to me, some people are saying like, oh, he shouldn't be punished for his views. I don't think that's what's happening, and it's not. I don't think it's like a view, right? It's like he's just supporting war. He's supporting murder. It's like he's just very, very wrong about the facts of the situation, and so he's supporting some really indefensible acts. So it's not like a matter of opinion. And as we were talking, I think right before the show, there have been lots of players who have said some very, like, you know, racist stuff, sexist stuff, but yeah, there have never been a sanction against a specific player like there possibly could be here. The bigger question, though, I think, because I don't really feel like we have to talk about Karyakin that much, is what should happen to the Russian players? Because people are saying like all Russian athletes should be banned, which for me, I don't know, that seems like that's still very much up in the air and hasn't been decided yet. For the moment, it's just the Russian flag that's been banned, to be clear. You're just not allowed to play with the flag.
I'm shocked to even hear that suggested as like an idea, as people are, I think pretty much all our viewers are aware, and as some people are pointing out in chat, I mean, you've got players like Nepomniachtchi or Peter Svidler, who've spoken out very clearly against the war. And I think the majority of Russian chess players who've said anything have spoken out against the war, right? So they're just as much against the war as, a Ukrainian or Nigel Short,
Yeah,
so,
they're suffering more than we are in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, they're already, they're opposing it themselves already. And in a sense, their opposition is stronger than ours. Like if I go out into the streets here in Berkeley and say I'm against this war, and they say the same thing in Russia, they're taking on a much greater risk by doing the same thing. So I just don't even see the argument for banning them. Do either of you even, I don't know how to argue against it without even understanding it. Do either of you understand why the Russian players who are against the war should have any kind of sanction fall on them?
Well, I feel some conflict on the issue. So let me just say, the one time I got so angry politically in my life, and to the point of really going on tilt, was when we invaded Iraq in 2003. I was so angry. And yeah. I think even then, we got to say the worldwide protests were even bigger then. It's hard to imagine. In terms of like numbers, it was a little bit warmer at that time. But in any case, the numbers were extraordinary in 2003. And I was so angry. But then 2003, I went to Hungary to play in a bunch of chess tournaments. And, on the way there, I remember on the train, the passport control guy was like, "Where are you going? Baghdad?" He thought it was funny. I thought it was kind of funny, but it also had an edge to it. In any case, but then as all these tournaments I went to, it was simply always the case that I was seen not as an American, but just like as a chess player, and that the stuff that the country I belonged to was doing, that I wasn't in any way really responsible for it. So I have that memory of not being persecuted for basically a very similar crime that Russia is now doing right now. And I have a lot of sentiments for the idea that chess players have a kind of a brotherhood. Obviously there's women out there too, but you know what I mean? There's a camaraderie of a sense of like, oh, if I show up in some city and I don't know anybody and I knock on some chess player's door, it's not like they're obliged to help me or whatever, but there will be some kind of sense of commonality. And it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing throughout the world. It's really incredible. Sometimes I take it for granted because it's been part of my life for so long. But
I'm sorry, just to interject, but it's happening now. There are lots of chess players that are living like Poland or Europe, and are like, yeah, any chess players are welcome to stay with them. That's like all.
Yeah, no, it's very beautiful. So that's the side of the argument, which says to me like, no way can you do it. On the other hand, what's going on now in terms of the world's response to Russia is that everybody in Russia is getting the squeeze. So for example, when we talk about FIDE, almost every time FIFA comes up, the World Soccer Organization, because it has a very similar organizational structure, very similar level of corruption. But they have taken away the Champions League from St. Petersburg. And then now, say, for example, Poland began by saying, they're not going to play the World Cup qualification against Russia. And now FIFA said, no, you can't even play the World Cup this summer. That's a huge, oh my gosh, massive similar thing that I think is going to start happening in FIDE. It's already starting to happening in FIDE with the Russian players. Now, we're talking about the timeline. We're talking about like FIDE has already condemned Karyakin, and now he could, If you imagine a similar move to the World Cup being taken away from Russia, it would be this very similar thing with Karyakin not being to play the candidates. Very similar thing. So,
but what's the argument for it? Why would that make sense to do it?
So I'm not, where I feel conflict is what's happened is in the last 4 to 5 days, the amount of pressure of economic, sport, and sport is just one small piece of it, but it's a thing that's been put on Russians and Russia is so extreme, it's so extreme that if we imagine back in 2003, if the screws had been placed, obviously I wouldn't have liked it. And I would have felt it would have been unfair and untrue for me to be persecuted for the war in Iraq. But if it had been, and everyone began to feel the screws in the same way the Russians are feeling the screws now, then maybe something would have changed. And honestly, it would have been to our advantage if we could have admitted our mistake earlier rather than later.
So you're saying like if we just look at the chess world, it's like, oh, 3 Americans don't get to go play in a chess tournament, big deal. But if it's part of a widespread kind of thing where some other dude can't do his business trip and some other woman can't like meet with, is told like, oh no, you can't work in the London office as like, you can't do like a semester here. You can't do, professors aren't allowed to do their sabbaticals or whatever. Like suddenly you've got a lot of people in the US who have the heat turned up on them to actually do something about what's going on in the US. So like maybe you walked in one protest or something like that, but now it's like your livelihood's at stake. You feel it more, maybe you do more than that.
Right. Actually, interesting example in recent days. I follow Chelsea because we have an American player playing on the Chelsea team. And Roman Abramovich, who is one of the oligarchs, owns that team. And because of the pressure, he's had to step down as the head of the club. And then his daughter said some stuff. And then all of a sudden, he's flying out to the talks right now to be part of the talks. Now, would he have been part of those talks if he hadn't had the kind of pressure which touched his coconuts enough to have to at least abandon not only the club, but maybe the situation he has in London, which is where the oligarchs are keeping their money, which is not in Russia. They're not keeping their money in rubles, I'll tell you that, right? So that kind of pressure is the kind of example I mean of like a universal pressure that suddenly gets pushed on a whole country, which you could call it unfair, but it might be the kind of thing which really puts the screws and actually ends the matter.
So person by person, it's not necessarily fair or commensurate with anyone's responsibility for what their country is doing, but it could be tactically effective or strategically.
Right. So I want to just say, those are my two sides of the issue. I feel conflicted about it, but I get both sides, and I have so much sentiment for the brotherhood of chess players. I can't tell you, like, especially when I was young and poor, how many times, even if a guy just at some random tournament bought me a sandwich, I mean, like when I was young and poor traveling through Europe, and it was just camaraderie. And, it's not always just material help. It's just like, oh, you're new in the city. Let me show you what you need to do here. Let me show you how to find a place to stay. Little small things that are so important to creating a sense of like, we're all kind of in this together. And that rather, what's really interesting in the chess world is that the identity as a chess player takes precedent over your identity as whatever country you're from, which to me is fascinating. This is a fascinating thing.
Yeah. So I feel like you guys kind of nailed the kind of both sides of the thing. Because again, I'm definitely leaning like anti-ban, but if it's it's kind of like a matter of, well, you understand that it sucks for everybody, but that's kind of the situation that Putin has kind of put us all in. So it's very like unfortunate for everyone being affected by it in Russia, but that's just kind of the situation. I feel like it's as a chess player, it just feels painful to punish other chess players that have nothing to do with the situation, and to punish them in the worst possible way, like they can't play chess. It's just like such a bummer. And also, I gotta say, like, there's lots of Russians who don't live in Russia and just don't even have a way to, like, they can't even go protest if they wanted to or whatever. They don't have a way to do anything that would then just kind of lose their right to play. Lots of Russian players in the US, that wouldn't be able to play, and I think that would be just a huge bummer. And I guess the question is, like, how much would it actually affect the real life situation and, like, decision making of Putin? And I don't know. To me, it feels like a real shame to do it without some kind of, like, guarantee that it's actually going to make things for the better.
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing. If we were analyzing a chess game and we were saying, is this move like a good move or a bad move, right? The only way we would know if a move is a good or bad move would be by comparison to the other moves you have available, right? So you wouldn't just be saying, is it fair or not to sanction the knight on h5, right? Or is this a good move, right? To put our bishop on h2 and take away a couple squares from the knight on h5. You'd be saying, is this the best? If you compare this to other options, is it better or worse, right? One of your options is to do nothing and just, let the Russian military do whatever Putin orders them to do, right? And then I guess if you want to say that sanctioning Russian players is wrong, you have to, like, reach a point where you've got some other suggestion of what should be done, maybe.
And also the why of the sanctions. So, for example, I think it's wrong to sanction somebody for saying something dumb. Like, Karyakin's basically really gone for it. It said some ridiculous things, and people in this social media world have really put the screws on him. They've essentially canceled him. And if we started sanctioning people for saying, chess players for saying dumb things, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing because it would never end, the amount of dumb things that chess players have sometimes said. So that part of it, I'm not into. I'm not into that at all, even though, he has said some incredibly dumb things. But for example, like, if he lost his candidate spot because he was Russian, that would be, just the exact mirror image of now Russia not being able to play the World Cup, So, yeah, it's just a brutal.
I mean, Karyakin has been, like, mega canceled. People are threatening to cancel anyone that even works with Karyakin, right? They're like, if any site signs you, or, like, I'm just going to cancel my membership, like, people are done. So if it's almost like a logistics issue, like with the Olympia, like, how would you even hold it? Like, at this point, people are so angry. And I don't know if I don't know if it's justified or not, but people are so angry at him that they, right, if he plays the candidates, I feel like people are just going to boycott the candidates, boycott FIDE. Like,
I boycotted the last candidates, so it'll be nothing new for me. Easy, no sweat off my back.
I think one thing too that was just kind of an obvious thing that has to be said is one of the differences between now and 2003, I think, comes clear in this little anecdote. Is, so when I was in Hungary, there was a British GM there, and he was like pro-Iraq war. It was kind of surprising. And he wasn't ashamed to talk about it either. But there was no Twitter then. And so what is he going to do? He's going to talk to like 5 to 10 people. Well, Karyakin really broadcast it, man, to gazillion people. And then all of a sudden it's like a fire, So it's like, that's when this thing of opinions being controversial becomes like, people feel like they have to be punished then for the opinions. Whereas previously, if you had a dumb opinion, not that many people would know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, FIDE wouldn't sanction you based on hearsay because somebody at a tournament is like, I overheard him saying this, pro-American imperialist stuff. And, I want him sanctioned by FIDE.
Yeah, and there just wouldn't be enough people to be mad at him to get the motion started,
Yeah. Yeah, I think another thing to ask about this like sanctions is where would it go? Like what would be the logical conclusion of it if you extended such a policy to other situations? Because there have been other situations where it hasn't been applied, as far as we know, any kind of FIDE sanctions, right? So if you said as long as the U.S. is occupying Afghanistan, Americans can't play in any FIDE tournaments, right? And do that to every military conflict in the world. It's interesting because you kind of, and you do this to stuff other than chess, right? Because I mean, Jesse's idea isn't just like, oh, let's get 3 chess players, right? He's saying like, if this were the tool, it would mean that the whole international community would be just slamming just across the board sanctions against any country involved in military conflicts. I mean, it would basically be a way of telling the world, like, we can't do any economics or any trades or any sports or entertainment or anything until we've stopped war, right? It's kind of that would ultimately be where it would lead to. It would be like, you can't do any of your stuff until you've taken care of the real stuff.
Right.
I mean, that seems like, I mean, honestly, it sounds like a great system. Of course, it would involve things that are much bigger than chess, like finances, traveling, all this stuff. So
yeah,
Of course, yeah.
at that point, I would think, like, number one, that people might not care about chess as much anyway, since their whole country is being shut down.
Yeah, we'd be a tiny footnote.
Right. And so and number two, it'd be probably impossible. Like, if we didn't shut down, it would probably be illegal to do any business with any kind, or to something to that effect. So we're definitely not there yet. I mean, they're like, I think they started like banning bank accounts and stuff. They're starting to restrict travel, but it's not like a complete isolation of Russia. Certainly heading that way.
Oh, it's pretty real. It's pretty real.
Oh, it's definitely started. Yeah, I mean, things are terrible over there. But so yeah, the question's like, how much does like FIDE have to do? It's very weird. I mean, I'm sure it's really tough for them, right? They just wanted to like run some candidates tournaments. They didn't want to have to deal with like this whole thing, I mean, it's insane. What about Dvorkovich, guys? I mean, I feel like that's the other part of this. Like,
Yeah.
What are we supposed to do with this guy?
So let's just say, for those who don't know, Arkady Dvorkovich, we don't know exactly his relationship to Putin, but we know it's close. He's the head of FIDE. He's also a chess player. So that's where I think he had sympathy with a lot of the other top chess players. And we got to say, this is the first FIDE organization where we've had, I don't know the first, but we have several former top GMs like Sutovsky and Short kind of in the control, some of the controlling positions, not number one, but being in some powerful positions. So this guy is a chess player and a friend of Putin. I don't think he qualifies as an oligarch, but he's got like, he's got some real ins there. And it's been controversial from the start that this guy has had his in.
Right.
And the whole thing is, we got to go back and say that Russian meddling in FIDE has been going on for like since the beginning of time. At least. I mean, you got to take it back all the way to the Botvinnik Bronstein match, I think, to start talking about. I mean, such a long history of them messing with various things within the FIDE organization.
Yeah, even the last election, there was a ChessBase article just a couple of years ago about how essentially the story was like that Putin himself called the prime minister of Israel and told him that like Israel has to vote for Dvorkovich, or like something to that effect. Basically just like,
basically there was like a whole press that went through the Russian embassies, through official diplomatic channels, to many, many, many countries, to their diplomatic liaisons saying, you need to go to whoever's running the chess federation in your country and pressure them to vote with Dvorkovich. So that article seemed pretty convincing that Putin's regime had put some effort into trying to have control over the chess federation. That was a goal for them that they put an effort into. Out of it, they get Dvorkovich at the helm. But here, I would say FIDE is taking a really hard line against Russia so far. So it's like, Putin didn't get his money's worth out of that appointment somehow.
Well, and I think the other thing to say that we got to say that's important about this topic is, I think in many countries, like let's say we were talking about chess players getting banned in America, would the U.S. government even know about it? No. But if Karyakin gets canceled from this tournament, will Putin feel it? Yes. Will it be decisive for Putin? No, but he will feel it. Karyakin has been given like essentially the Medal of Honor, the Russian equivalent of the Medal of Honor or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's met the dude. There's numerous pictures of him with Putin together. And Putin follows the chess world. So
I mean, chess is a serious sport in Russia.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And I think it's also serious for Putin. So it's like, it is actually, it isn't just a small thing. It isn't just some small little thing in this little geopolitical play that we're involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you guys think, should we have a re-election? How can... Well, they cut ties with the Russian sponsors. That seems like a big deal. Because FIDE's getting, I think it was like 1 or 2 million from them total every year. Possibly more under the table, who knows? So that seemed good. The question is like whether it should be more or not. I mean, right, it's like with a Putin guy at the top, it's never going to be divorced from the situation like fully. So I don't know. I don't know how to deal with it. I mean,
and the other consequence of this that David was talking about, the moves and their consequences, like this incredible pressure that goes beyond the chess world, that's so now united. Imagine, it's so amazing to me that Switzerland has even started saying some stuff. Switzerland never says anything. When Switzerland starts talking about you, then you're in big trouble, buddy. So the pressure is so broad-based, covering so many sections of society, that an effect that it could have, that could see happening in the chess world, is if Putin is not pushed out of power. And frankly, it's hard to see. The guy's consolidated his power grip so tightly that it's hard to see how he's actually going to be removed from power. If he stays in power, then what will happen in both, let's say, the financial world and the chess world, and probably also things like the soccer/football world, will be that there will be two different systems. Right? So, for example, if we take them out of the banking system, then they have to create their own banking system, and they got to hope that China goes along with it. Similarly, with something like chess, right? What would they do? Maybe they would organize a match between Karyakin and Ding for the world championship, right? That's what would end up happening if we actually excluded them. And it would, of course, the point of excluding them would be, oh, maybe this dramatic instant pressure will actually force a resolution to the situation. However, if it does not, then we're in for decades and decades of just the world being bifurcated, right? And it seems, when you look at it from the Western point of view, it seems like it's everyone against Russia. But if they hold hands with the Chinese, that's already, a huge part of the world's population right there, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess to some extent, I wish, that there were some serious, action taken against every war/warring country. When it only happens here, then it makes you wonder why here and why not elsewhere. I guess we sort of know why here and why not elsewhere, but since I'm against war, I guess the lack of action on other events doesn't give me a reason not to do it here. It just gives me a reason that, like, maybe you should have done it on all those other situations too. if I had been excluded from playing chess because I was American, I think I would have accepted that.
All right, Kostya, we got a breaking news alert. We got a breaking news alert, buddy.
Oh no.
Karyakin has tweeted at you, buddy.
Oh no. I was hoping he wouldn't. Yeah.
He did, buddy. No, this guy, he's on full tilt. Well, you got to understand. Look, one of the things that I just want to say, I'm going to read this tweet a little. I haven't even read it yet. But the thing that I want to say is that a political shift in my own viewpoint of how I see politics has happened in the last couple of years, where I really feel like we think that we come to our political decisions because of rational thinking or something. We think that we have thought about things and we come to these decisions. More and more, I just come to think it's a tribal thing. You believe the things that your family and your friends around you believe. So for Karyakin, he's got this world that's been created being by close to people around Putin. And so he's got this worldview. And now, because the guy has so many international contacts, he is forced to like either go into a hole or defend himself. And the more he defends himself, honestly, the worse it gets. All right, here it is, buddy.
Well, look,
it's about you, buddy. Have you also collected money? By the way, Kostya raised a bunch of money last night along with Agard, the famous trainer. Have you also collected money, Kostya Kost, for the residents of Donbass, whom the Ukrainian army has been bombing for the last 8 years? You can come there and go, for example, to the Alley of Angels, which was built in honor of the children of Donbass who died from the shelling of Ukrainian ... Oh, Ukrainian ... because he kept going. He kept going. Ukrainian criminals. Is it still funny, Kostya? And everything is over. After everything is over, I will donate at least the equivalent of $10,000 of my money to the residents of Donbass affected by the war. And the last, hello, Kostya. Don't call yourself, a professional chess player. And he starts talking garbage about your rating. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Whew.
Wait, that's great. Oh man, I got him to donate $10,000 to people that are in a war-torn country.
Yeah.
He said after everything is over. So I don't know when it's going to be over. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also the timing of this suggests that he's listening to to our talk so far and doesn't like what we have to say, or at least doesn't like what Kostya has to say so far.
Maybe. If anything, he matched the donation. That's awesome. Look, guys, a lot of people have been tweeting at him. I didn't even want to, but I mean, it was for charity. It was for a good cause. Like, I normally actually really don't like dunking on people that are being kind of like, buried on social media. So, but we raised like thousands of dollars, I think, on the promise of that alone. So, I had to do it. And now he's donating. So I think this troll fundraising is a big industry. People should look into it. I think there's a lot of potential in this.
The guy's on tilt, dude. And I think I think you got to understand, like, when your worldview gets challenged and you can't rectify your own sense of what's going on. And then, he's on so much tilt, dude, that he like went and looked at your FIDE like card and your age and all yada yada.
Yeah.
That's full tilt, dude. That's full tilt. And then he attacks you personally. So it's like, I have I don't know if it's called sympathy, but like, it's kind of like this. And here's a chess metaphor that I think is oftentimes when I'm analyzing my games, I realize often what happens is you think you have, let's say, a clear advantage. You think you really do believe it. And then you're looking at variations, looking, and all of a sudden you realize it's very difficult to find that clear advantage. Maybe you got nothing. Maybe you have nothing. And then you start spending time on the clock, and then you start looking for the weirdest ideas to try to justify, to try to get what you think the position should hold. And there's a cognitive dissonance there that's going to take time for you to like That's why people tank and also when they tank and then they make a really bad move. So the cognitive dissonance is so powerful that it takes a lot of struggle for them to then match the reality of the situation with what they think the reality should be. And when I see someone going on tilt like that, that's what it is. And we've all been there to some extent, whether it's politics or the chessboard or whatever it is. We've all had that cognitive dissonance situation.
Yeah, definitely. I've said some very stupid things on like Facebook and Twitter, and then I look back at it, and it's like, honestly, the social media thing is like an addiction in and of itself. It's like, right, you say something, people say back at you, especially when like, yeah, you're interacting with a lot of people. It's so easy to get hyped up in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, $10,000 is now 1,000,000 rubles.
Yeah. I don't want to go after the rubles because that affects a lot of people, not just Koryak.
At least he promised it in dollars.
I feel like 1,000,000 rubles.
Yeah. Well, I predict Kostya's not going to answer.
Oh, he will. He will say something.
Maybe I'll raise more money.
Yeah, if you raise more money, you'll respond.
No, so I don't know. I just want to say I think it's really interesting. I think I was very surprised that FIDE in particular took such swift action. I mean, we're talking it's a matter of days, and I think it goes along, too, with the European sentiment that is so outraged. And honestly, I think what is really driven by is this is my just personal take on it, is the reason it's happening so fast
the response to
is the scar of World War II is so deep in Europe that people are losing their minds over this. And also, just in terms of historical memory, it's like people talk about Russian losses in World War II. They were all in Ukraine. Or not all of them, but like the Russian losses in World War II were so extreme. And then much of that was Ukrainian soldiers, then part of the Soviet Union. So it's like that historical memory, I think, is what's making this so quick and urgent that in other cases wasn't, right? It wasn't, the idea didn't even come up to start taking chess players out of, say, the World Championship or sanctioning what they're saying. Didn't even arise.
Yeah, it's very new. Yeah, again, I wish I had more to say. Honestly, I'm just like very conflicted. I don't know what should be done. I heard reports that the International Olympic Committee is considering a ban on all Russian athletes. And I guess that's one detail we didn't really mention is that like the Russian flag was already kind of banned because of their previous Olympic fiasco.
We should mention what that was, is that, and this is one of the reasons actually it's kind of important to talk about banning chess, is that in the United States, the government does very little to help our athletes. But in Russia, they are engaged in active cheating measures with doping. There's a great documentary called Icarus that talks about the Soviet doping regime. It is intense. That is why they were banned from at least using their flag in the Olympics. And it also shows the lengths to which Putin is willing to go in the sporting arena for the Russians to win, which is really an old school Soviet playbook of like, oh, if the Russians win, then it shows something about how our state is great or something like that, right? And so this move against the Russian chess players is a move against Putin himself. We're part of this. All of a sudden, our little chess world is part of this bigger drama.
Yeah. I just feel like, I guess here's something that I feel about it. And it seems like none of us have really fully figured this out. We're all kind of just muddling around in these ideas. But here's one thought is like, if an organization like FIDE is going to do this, it should somehow be based on some kind of large scale international society and not like one alliance maneuvering against another alliance, right? Like what if Dvorkovich muscled up the votes to be like, I don't know, taking sanctions against Ukraine today, right? And then you'd be like, because I think the Russian side of the story is that Ukraine has done something wrong, right? Or I mean, I don't know it too well, right? But like, I assume like they're not just like, right?
Putin is saying that Ukraine has been committing violence against Russians,
against Russian,
and they're trying
people
to
living in Ukraine,
them.
right?
Yeah.
So what if Dvorkovich maneuvered FIDE and was like, we're saying that these kind of crimes have been happening in Ukraine for 8 years or whatever, that, Karyakin like could be his source. And then he said, he maneuvered his votes and, got Nigel Short kicked out, saying, disrepute for like standing up for the fascists in Ukraine, right? Kick Nigel Short out of the vice presidency and sanction all the Ukrainian chess players and stuff like that, right? Like, you don't want all these Olympic committees and trade organizations, et cetera, to just be places where these kind of proxy voting wars are played out based on influence. You would want there to be some kind of international consensus that was going to equally go against any aggressor, right? So, when Russia is able to like veto something at the UN about Russia, instead of, apparently there's no rule at the UN that you have to recuse yourself, right? So if the world tried to repudiate the US's actions in Iraq, the US can always veto that. And Russia can always veto anything against them. There's no like recuse yourself and let the people who aren't murderers do the voting. I think for this to really be useful and not just sort of a maneuvering kind of move, it would have to have a feeling that it's not just another political process, right? You'd have to feel like the parties involved were taking a back seat and some kind of broader coalition of people were making those decisions, right? Because right now, like if you were in Russia and you didn't know what to believe about what's going on and you see this and then you just think like they're sanctioning Russian players, you wouldn't think, oh my gosh, that means our country's done something bad. You would think like, why didn't they sanction American players during the Iraq war? This organization's just like being used against us. It would be a very, very easy conclusion to come to, right? Where Jesse says you want to have that cognitive dissonance and feel like stuck and try and figure out what's actually going on. You wouldn't get that there. The narrative's so easy for people on the other side of this to just say like, oh, it's like, the Western allies, who they're willing to bomb other people when it's useful for them. And then when other people do it, suddenly it's against international law and then they sanction you and blah, 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 So it can feel like geopolitical power moves rather than an international community saying, we don't accept this kind of behavior and we're all, working to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. FIDE is an international organization, and it feels like they should kind of, and they really try to kind of stay out of it, which I think is the right thing to do. They really try to stay like apolitical, but yeah, when the whole world is kind of united against Russia in this case, it's hard for them to stay neutral. So, Again, I don't know what what should be done. I'm not even sure what I would suggest. It seems like a good thing that Dvorkovich isn't able to just completely control everyone around him. And I have to say, just like from what I've heard, like on a personal level, people like Dvorkovich. Like they like working with him. They think he's a good guy, chess player, etc. It's just the connection to Putin is insane. It's just very concerning. So yeah, I would hope that FIDE is an organization that has some kind of it's not run by a dictator. Hope that it has some democratic values, and it seems like they do. It definitely doesn't seem like they just do whatever Russia wants them to do. But obviously there's some influence there.
Okay, well, we'll keep tabs on the issue. Maybe we'll talk about it again. Hopefully it's going to be resolved soon. At the moment, I think today is the worst day so far.
By the way, as far as singling out players for sanctions, apparently FIDE is like has a clause about by bringing the game into disrepute. That seems so general and
Too
vague,
general.
right? What about sexism? What about racism? What about anything,
Yeah, it's
right?
too
So
much.
I I don't know how I feel about that tool in the shape it's currently in.
No, and right. And who's to decide? No, it's totally, it's a really tough one, man.
Yeah.
And even if we feel like it's the, that if FIDE, let's say Karyakin loses his spot, it would just be such a nuclear option for the chess world if he were to lose his spot in the candidates. It is, let me just say, it is so hard won, these spots in the candidates. It is a huge deal. But if he lost it, I mean, it might feel good because we feel like this war against Ukraine is terrible. But on the other hand, like, who gets to decide? I don't trust that. I don't like like some committee from FIDE, one of the most historically corrupt institutions on earth, that they would get to decide when someone says something wrong. No, please, no. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So like my take on those kinds of things, and I'm not an expert on cancel culture, but I think it's cool if millions of chess fans don't want to watch Karyakin play. I think it's fine to cancel somebody if you feel like canceling them, right? I can choose whether or not to watch a tournament or a player, and each of you can do the same thing. I don't know that FIDE can be picking people based on who said something too bad or not too bad, and then they're allowed to play chess or not according to FIDE. I think it's fine for the fans to cancel them via the organizers.
Yeah, we've never seen that though either. There's never been any precedent of a fan movement.
I mean, I think that people should get canceled for short draws by fans via the organizers, right? The fans should stop watching those tournaments, and then the organizers won't be able to get sponsors, and they'll have to invite someone else. So I'm fine with that if that's where people vote with their eyeballs.
Yeah, but that's separate, of course. That's like private tournaments versus FIDE. FIDE can't, they can make rules against quick draws, but they can't they can't cancel people if they're not playing interesting chess.
Right. No, I just mean in general, I'm okay with, people generally making choices, but I think for FIDE to be saying who has or hasn't thrown the game into disrepute is pretty, tricky water.
Yeah.
There should be some other standard than that, something more clear than that, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, weird situation. I don't know. We'll keep thinking about it. It's like,
yeah.
I didn't really think we would come to any like huge conclusions.
I was surprised, Kostya. I thought you guys were going to be full into the cancellation. I thought I was like, I'm going to be the guy who's going to be saying, there's two sides to this issue. I thought that's the way it was going to be. But no, we're kind of on the same page.
No, it looks like none of us really figured it out as far as I can tell.
I do think that whether it's chess world, just beyond the chess world, that the blanket pressure on Russia is new, and it's so powerful, and the unification that it's then caused, like the help from the outside world has caused unification, or has helped unification within the Ukraine. And that resistance within the Ukraine, now funded from abroad, oh buddy, it's a real thing. It's a very powerful animal all of a sudden. And the pressure within Russia, economic pressure especially. Oh man, like at the moment, imagine you're some kid and you don't have that much money, and now all of a sudden you're not going to be able to buy the new phone. Forget buying a phone, buddy. Forget buying some internet router. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to afford it. So all this stuff that you take for granted is all of a sudden just going to go away. Well, that's pressure. That's real pressure. Yeah.
Also, guys, sorry, I just want to bring it up because there have been so many people bringing up this point, like, well, what about like America? America did this before. Why wasn't America sanctioned and all this stuff? And I don't know, like, a lot of people bring it up. A lot of those people, I think, bring it up genuinely. a lot of those people, if you click on their Twitter page, you see that they're just pro-Putin. And they're just bringing it up because they're trolls. Maybe they're just Russian bots that have been around for several years now. So, but there are, I think, real people making this point as well. So I feel like we should maybe discuss it a bit. My feeling, it's like, that's a good point. Maybe that should happen. Like, maybe if there's an international consensus and a condemnation on Russia like there is now. I was 10 years old in 2003. For me, I didn't have the capacity to really think about it seriously. I actually remember seeing like the anti-war protests, and I remember feeling like, I don't know, I felt like the media made it seem like a normal thing. Like, yeah, every time the US does war, there's always anti-war protests. That's just what it's like. That's what I remember like about that time. And so I was like, yeah, okay, this is normal, I guess. And then, but obviously, I mean, looking back at it now, right, like, pretty clear like it was a huge mistake. So
it was clear at the time too. I mean, I understand you were 10 years old, you didn't necessarily know, but like it was really clear at the time. And I guess you probably don't know this, but like worldwide, everyone was against it. In the US, opinions were split because there was a very strong propaganda machine here, right? Just like right now, opinions are probably split in Russia about their current war, and then everywhere else opinions are not split, right? And it was similar with the Iraq war, and I realized that when I traveled abroad and found out that in other countries it was like 99% of people were like were against what the US was doing, you know, and only here where our own propaganda was brought to bear on it was their mixed opinion. And that's why if you want to know something about Russia, you shouldn't read American news or Russian news, right? You should read like Botswanan news, right? And if you want to know something about Botswana, you should read Brazilian news and see how they treat it. You know, like you have to sort of step outside of the focal point where people are going to be making an effort to control opinion.
I guess one of the things I would want to stress is that I think that if there's a difference, it's not like saying that like the American invasion was from a moral point of view any different. I think that simply the times have changed, and now this incredible condemnation that's coming from all corners against Russia will then, if it works especially, will set a precedent for really stopping wars in the future. For example, for the last 20 years, I've been nervous about China trying to take back Taiwan, a very similar situation, where they feel a grievance about it and they feel like it belongs to them and they feel like it's part of their national pride to get it back, just like the Soviet Union, just like Russia. And for the last 20 years, it's been like, oh, maybe there's some American warship out there that might kind of slow them down or something. And that would have been the defense until 5 days ago. And now all of a sudden, well, no, China, it's going to be a different ball game for you, buddy. If you try to go for it, you can see now what will happen if you do it. It's not just going to be some government actor that you're up against. It's a much bigger force, which is, I guess, a really cool thing. And when it comes down to then this question of what we do in the chess world, it's like, right, well, the chess world then, I guess, arguably needs to follow suit and do this incredibly punitive action in our own little corner of the world, so that wars then basically become so extraordinarily costly for everybody touching that war, in even a tangential way, that they are prohibitively expensive, right? In every possible way.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a weird thing, and I feel like, well, you know, we had social media just a little while ago when the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict was happening.
Right.
It's not like that didn't go, you know, very viral in the chess world, but somehow there wasn't this pressure on FIDE, I think, to do something about it in particular.
Right.
And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, it seems like this thing is like setting all kinds of new precedents, which maybe isn't a bad thing. It sounds like people are upset about a lot of stuff that's happened in the past, and it's like, yeah, maybe things should be different.
The other obvious thing in the chess world I think needs to be mentioned is, in contrast to, say, the Iraq War, here within the chess world, everybody knows people who are directly affected, whether they're Ukrainians or Russians or maybe even Poland. So it's like we know people at least tangentially that are now carrying an AK-47 in the streets of Kiev, trying to defend their country, and we know that these people are not soldiers by nature. No, these are just regular schmo dudes like me and you who are carrying an AK-47 trying to defend against some hairball like missile systems that are coming raining down on them. So it's like it's a very small world that we have, and we know these people to some extent. Yeah, so that's the other thing that's just like so different about, and what's cool, honestly, about the chess world is that it is so worldwide and the connections are so deep going between different countries. Even if it is just some time you played a guy and you analyze the game with it after, or maybe you went out to dinner after with a bunch of friends, these people, right? It's a small world.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I guess we will cut it there. See you next time.